welcome to this week's edition of Brocast. Brought to you from the Man Cave by our sponsor, No Name Sesame Rice Crackers.
Why the heck is that our sponsor?
Because No Name Sesame Rice Crackers are super bro-like. All the bros eat No Name Sesame Rice Crackers.
With zero trans fat?
Damn right.
Alright, keep going.
For today's podcast, we have a very special topic.
So one of the most tabooed words in society is sex. In fact, I wonder if any of you are already uncomfortable at the mention of the word sex. But what about the word virginity? Virginity means innocence and purity. Virginity means weddings where young women are swathed in white, a tradition that represents the fact they've abstained from all immoral acts, or should have. Virginity means that it's okay to create social settings where boys get high fives for getting laid and are encouraged to divulge all details of their heterosexual acts. Virginity means people thinking there's honestly something wrong with a 40-year-old whose cherry hasn't been popped. There's so much judgment surrounding virginity. Why? On this segment of Brocast, we're going to be exploring the controversial nature of virginity, particularly what is it and what does it mean for society, gender roles, and sexuality.
And now on to Megan Abel, who's going to tell us a little bit about some current events surrounding virginity. The average male loses his virginity a little before 17 years of age, whereas their female counterpart will generally lose her virginity at an average age of nearly 18. A survey of adults aged 20 to 29 reported women have an average of 4 sex partners, while men average 7. Why do these statistics exist, and why do they matter? I'm Megan Abel from Brocast, and I suggest we take a closer look. Teaching girls that their virginity makes them special, pure, and valuable tells them at the same time that without that, they are tainted and damaged. This message is conveyed to girls throughout their lives in subtle and sometimes not so subtle ways. Girls are told constantly not to dress a certain way, not to act a certain way, and not to do certain things. Whether it be by school dress code or by fashion retailers, girls are sexualized at a young age. Told in one ear that they should be wearing over-sexualized clothing, like the thongs Abercrombie made in children's sizes, with sayings like eye candy and wink wink on them, and in the other that they shouldn't wear tank tops because they'll distract their male peers. Society has placed such a strong value on girls remaining pure and special, while their male counterparts are not held to the same standard. While girls are told that they are responsible for maintaining their own purity, guys are told that they too are responsible for maintaining that purity, not their own. The concept of a girl's purity is treated as the property of their fathers until they're married, and then as the property of their husbands. This is exemplified in a religious ceremony known as a purity ball, a night where father and daughter dress up in their best, most formal attire and spend an evening of dinner and dancing together, then end the night off with a vow to abstain from sex until marriage. This pledge reads along the lines of, I pledge to remain sexually pure until the day I give myself as a wedding gift to my husband. I know that God requires this of me, that He loves me, and that He will reward me for my faithfulness. The male version of a purity ball is an integrity ball. The integrity ball pledge reads very differently. I choose before God to remain pure in my lifestyle as I grow toward the goal of manhood, and until such a time that I marry. I will be a young man of integrity and accountability as I strive to be an example to those around me. I will be bold and courageous no matter what. Today I choose to seek after the high calling of God in every area of my life. Now there are very stark differences between these two pledges, and honestly that's not surprising. A story used to encourage girls to have a purity ball is that of a person who has waited a long time to buy the car of their dreams, but when the day comes to drive it home, the dealer tells them that the car has steering problems, a lot of mileage on it, and has been in a few wrecks. This delightful word picture likens a damaged car to a girl's sexual purity. Boys, on the other hand, are encouraged to stay abstinent because, and these words came from the mouth of Pastor Luke Baker at an integrity ball, you probably won't marry the girl you're dating now, so that is someone else's future wife, and someone else may be dating your future wife. If you knew that somebody was with your future wife, he asks a group of teenage boys, touching her in ways you don't like, pressuring her, how would that make you feel? With such a high value placed on a girl's virginity and her remaining pure, boys are taught that they shouldn't respect girls because they are human beings. They should respect girls because they belong to a man and will belong to another man in the future. Girls are told to maintain their purity, and boys are told to have the integrity not to damage another man's goods. Naturally, with girls being so discouraged from practicing sexual activity, and boys being only taught to protect women's virginities for the sake of other men, if at all, it makes sense that girls lose their virginity later and have less sexual partners.
Thanks, Megan Abel. And now we're going to be hearing a personal memoir from Jessica Harry Prasad.
Because I am a girl, I have been taught that my virginity is the one major feature that makes me pure and practically defines my worth. I've been taught that to give up my virginity before marriage is to become less valuable and thus less wanted by men. I have been told endless times that if I were to lose my virginity before marriage, I would be a walking shame, a disgrace. That no respectable man would ever want me, as if I am defined by nothing more than my sexual history, and that my worth is directly proportional to how much a man desires me. The kind of mentality that feeds this idea is far too common for the quote-unquote progressive society we live in. It is the same mentality that told girls to stay in the kitchen while men did all the work and had all the fun. Throw back to the 1800s or throw back to 5 minutes ago when I discussed this podcast topic with my mom and she reiterated, yet again, the importance of my purity until marriage. This mentality is that which confines girls to the gender role of existing solely to please men, where I am expected to keep my virginity so that my future husband will be pleased with me. It is also that which promotes to men the idea that women are their playthings and that my husband will have the actual right to be displeased with me if I'm not a virgin at the time of my marriage. The ideology that sex defines your purity and worth is that which pushed me to make my 6th grade pledge to abstain from sex until marriage. At 11 years old, the idea that my worth would decrease as my sexual activity increased was so heavily ingrained into my mind that it even felt like a conscious and willing personal decision. However, while no one directly forced me to make that decision, it was, in fact, forced upon me. The teachings of my family and other adults about the perils of not being a virgin had prodded me ever so subtly in the direction of that decision since before I was old enough to know what sex was. The night before I went to church and pledged to abstain from sex until marriage, I heard my mom on the phone with my aunt. My aunt had found birth control pills inside my cousin Nicole's desk and was horrified. I remember my first instinct had been to judge Nicole instead of simply realizing that her virginity and her sex life were her own and had nothing to do with my own personal values and beliefs. That being said, I was 11, so my beliefs weren't formed and I just adopted the views of the adults around me. Even more subtly pushing girls into the direction of abstinence until marriage include things such as dress codes. How many times have I been told to wear a shirt with a higher neckline or a lower hemline so that I can leave something to the boys' imaginations? Similarly, my body is expected to be left to the imagination until marriage. Just as I should be allowed to wear what I please without judgment, I should be able to do what I please with my body without being deemed unholy and impure. Based on my own personal life experiences where I've been judged, even within the comfort of my own home, and told to cover up inside every educational establishment that believes in a dress code, I know that the double standard exists between men and women when it comes to sex. The fact that a family can teach their daughter or niece to not have sex until marriage and consider it to be as basic a lesson as learning to write their own name shows that society has not actually progressed as much as we'd all like to believe it has. Where it is okay to compare virginity to cars and deem one set of people better than the other. Where it is okay to hold a man's opinion over a woman's freedom of choice. Where gender roles still exist. Where bodily autonomy has lost all of its meaning. And where most young women, including myself, have spent at least some point in their life believing that their sexual status equates to their worth.
Thank you, Jessica Harry Prasad. And now we're going to be hearing from Lucy Chan with an exclusive interview.
Hi, my name is Lucy, and welcome to Broadcast. Today we'll be looking into the concept of virginity and its impact on gender roles, society, and sexuality. With me here today is Ramona, a 20-year-old female who's a psychology major at the University of Toronto. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Lucy. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, so let's get started. What does the idea of virginity represent to you?
I think virginity to me represents a constraint placed on individuals and younger folks, and it just kind of doesn't allow people to express their sexuality in a free way. I think it's a really limiting construct.
So, how is the concept of virginity viewed by society?
I think society generally sees it as a necessity, as a way of labeling people, and it's really easy to label someone based on their sexuality. So virginity is just kind of a concept that's used to facilitate that.
How does society perceive females who have lost their virginity at a young age, per se?
I think it takes away from the choice of those young women, and society labels them as, people that are too sexually active or didn't know what they were doing, or ruined their lives or made such a huge mistake. So we take away the choice in that female's expression of their sexuality.
Mm-hmm. Is this the same case for males who have lost their virginity at a young age?
I think there's a threshold, but for the majority of young men, it's not as big a deal if you lose your virginity at a young age. It becomes something that is seen as, a badge of like honor instead of something that's demeaning to their sexuality. But I think that also places a lot of stress on young men in terms of coming to terms with their sexuality on their own terms as well.
So, would you say that a double standard exists between males and females?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, and why do you feel that this is the case?
Well, I think it just places a lot of stress on both sexes, where women are told not to express their sexuality, and men are told to over-express their sexuality. And this idea that whether you do lose your virginity or not at a young age determines, how you'll be viewed by your peers later on in life is really damaging to both sexes because, for a man, you might lose your virginity to a partner that you're not comfortable with just for the sake of losing it. And for a girl, you may have your experience diminished, which may have been really wonderful for you. It may have been diminished by the fact that your peers are now looking at you as someone who is overly sexual.
Mm-hmm. And what is commonly associated with the term virgin?
I think it's innocence, purity, white, things that have been untouched or, unclaimed, and no one's gone there and kind of laid waste to it. And I think that it's a really damaging ideal for both men and women to have that perception of that's what a virgin is.
And does this affect how society perceive fully grown adults who have never had sex before?
Absolutely. I think that people that after a certain age have not lost their virginity are viewed as less than people who have. So it kind of, again, reduces the ability of people to express their sexuality on their own terms.
With that being said, what is your own opinion about the value of virginity?
I think it's, for me personally, something about trust. Your body is your own, and whether you choose to express yourself sexually with it or not should be the decision of the individual and not something that society has a role in. So I think virginity's role in society is outdated and frankly needs to be scrapped.
So, in what cases does the idea of virginity cause harm or benefits, or is it neutral?
I think it's beneficial if you choose to view it as something that, is a choice that you're making, as it empowers you. Okay, I'm going to be a virgin until I feel comfortable losing my virginity to someone. But I think at the same time, it allows you to shame other people who may not have made the same choice that you did, whether they chose to abstain from sex or whether they chose to go ahead and explore all the different methods of sex. I think it's something that can be both harmful and beneficial depending on how the individual views it.
So, would you agree that society's perception of virginity has affected our perception of our own sexuality?
Absolutely.
Has society's perception of virginity changed over time?
I think grudgingly it started to, but I think that there's a lot more that could be changed.
And do you think that it'll continue to change in the future?
Yeah, I think the more young people educate themselves on the value of these ideas, and at the end of the day, they're just ideas, so they can be very powerful, or you can give them your own interpretation and not allow them to be so powerful.
And last question, should virginity continue to have as much societal significance as it does today?
In society, no. I think there's a lot of things in society that we should just leave to the individual, honestly. Yeah. So yeah, I think that in conclusion, virginity should be the individual's choice. It shouldn't be something that society is labeling you with or trying to use against you. If you feel comfortable with it, then by all means do what you want with your body, and that should be how society, as much as society interferes, because at the end of the day, it's your choice.
Okay, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Lucy Chen. Now we'll hear from Michaela Constance, her opinion on the topic of virginity.
Virginity is the concept of purity, the freedom from immorality or contamination. Before I address the belief that sex and any sexual activity is seen as a contamination, let's talk about the double standard when it comes to being a virgin between both genders. For girls, virginity is an abstract and intangible idea that must be protected and saved as a gift for their future husband. For boys, the label of virginity is one to be ashamed of. Virginity is the skin of a young scabby-kneed boy to be shed as soon as possible. While girls are taught to see sex as a contamination, that once they are sexually active, they are unclean, immoral, and impure, boys are taught sex is a rite of passage. Young men are raised into a world that tells them that if they haven't gotten laid yet, they lack the skill, looks, and attitude to have attained it. And I haven't even mentioned the controversy on gay sex, that some twisted religious extremists believe virginity is lost only when a girl's cherry has been popped, and so to avoid any contamination, encourage girls to practice anal sex, therefore bringing into question whether gay sex is real sex, since virginity is lost through sex, which shouldn't be a question at all. How many people have asked if lesbian sex counts towards losing one's virginity? For that matter, why do we say lose virginity? Why must we be sacrificing any part of ourselves? Why must we be losing something, giving away a piece of ourselves we can never take back? The idea that doing something means we are losing something supposedly pure in return keeps people from enjoying life out of fear. Sex should not be something to be ashamed of, something to regret, and something which we must give up purity for. Purity was a concept invented to keep women in shackles and men in line. Why does having sex mean losing morality when it's a form of the human body's expression? Many people choose to save sex until later in life, or not at all, for whatever reason, religion, personal feelings, or given situations. The practice of abstinence should also not be one that is seen as anything but what it is. It's a choice, and therefore there should be no negative connotations to it. As long as abstinence is a choice, like sex, that is made with informed consent and not out of fear, it's completely valid. People avoiding sex to keep their virginity out of the anxiety over the loss of something that shouldn't even be lost at all doesn't make sense. But as a conscious decision, it is one that has a right to be respected. In The Breakfast Club, a movie made in 1985, over 30 years ago, there's a conversation between two of the female characters regarding sex that rings true even now, which is pretty sad. It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? If you say you haven't had sex, you're a prude. If you say you have, you're a slut. It's a trap. The concept of virginity and its hold over society and behavioral norms is a catch-22. There's no way to benefit from the idea of virginity, so why do we keep its existence alive? The fact of the matter is, all sex is valid sex, and instead of telling people not to have it or to have more of it or less of it or a certain kind between genders and glorifying or shaming the initiation of it, we should be teaching people how to practice safe, consensual sex. Sex is a natural phenomenon, and if people choose to have it or not to have it, that doesn't make them any less pure or any more prude. Virgin or not virgin, why should you care at all?
Thanks, Michaela Constance, and thank you for listening. Perhaps you've gained just a bit more insight into the societal impact of virginity, whether it be on gender roles, how society defines individuals, or our own sexuality. At the end of the day, nothing is more important than making decisions that you yourself are happy with and feel safe and comfortable following through with, regardless of what society thinks. Thanks again to No Name Sesame Rice Crackers. That's all for today, and remember to tune in to next week's broadcast, where we look into the societal merits of the idiom ball is life.